yuva rapiti. Pero re yeri la yaruki. Mano bena dino re anu re yari. Watira kabura mona. Watira kabura konima. Watanda bubatanda iho. Watanda bubatanda iho. Yungura kavianda, mawiri kwata, watanda buwatanda kapumu, Olipura beda komainu, Olipura beda komainu, watanda bubatanda iho, watanda bubatanda iho, nyoko, hey, nyoko, watanda bubatanda iho, watanda bubatanda iho,
Distinguished participants joining virtually within Namibia and globally, a good morning. It gives me a great pleasure to deliver this remark at the occasion of the launch of the first virtual museum in Namibia, the Virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion. The concept of museums has a long history dating back to the 18th century, when they were established with the purpose to protect and conserve the different artifacts, to express the history of humanity, share knowledge and understanding, as well as interpret and appreciate the beauty of the collection. Museums still play this role, however, with the fascinating transformation of the world induced by technologies, especially the innovation brought in by the information and communications technologies, a clear need for adaptation and change has emerged. In 2018, a concrete call was made by the International Council of Museums when it selected the theme for International Museum Day to be Hyper-Connected Museum, New Approaches, New Public. This was to recognize and encourage museums to shift their approach to their collections through technology by exploring and strengthening the connections that tie them to their communities, cultural landscape, and natural environments. Further, and having learned from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on museums, the International Council of Museums, ICOM, decided that the 2021 theme for International Museum Day should be the future of museum, recover and reimagine. As such, ICOM invited museums, their professionals, and the community to create, imagine, and share new practices of co-creation of value, new business model for cultural institutions, and innovative solution for the social, economic, and environmental challenges of the present. I wanted to highlight the global themes of those International Museum Day for 2018 and 2021 because they are pertinent to our situation today. The two themes advocate that we need to rethink and reimagine the role of museum as educator in our societies using the means of today's world. The museum sector should develop appropriate solutions to address the challenge of fulfilling its mandate to serve as educational resources by exploring technology as a way to stay connected with audiences and indeed as a catalyst to reach new and younger audiences. Ladies and gentlemen, as you already know, the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has brought drastic changes in our life. The pandemic did not spare heritage places, leading to the closure of the museums around the world. In May 2020, UNESCO launched a report titled Museums Around the World in the Face of COVID-19 that revealed the impact of the pandemic on museums in its detail. The report sheds new light on the key trends in the world's museum, their reaction in the face of the crisis, their capacity of resilience, and the challenges of accessing culture in the time of crisis. The report also revealed that about 90% of the museum institutions around the world have been affected by temporary closure as part of the measure taken to combat the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Allow me to congratulate Namibian Museum for being among those in 10 countries in Africa that stayed connected with the audience using online platform initiatives. Ladies and gentlemen, the idea of the Virtual Museum of Namibia Fashion is a result of one of the recommendations of the Resilient Namibia online debate organized by UNESCO in 2020. These debates were organized as a rapid assessment of the COVID-19 pandemic with the theme COVID-19 Pandemic Impact on Namibia's Culture and Creative Industries. Different players in the culture and creative industry came together to share their experiences on the impact of the pandemic on the sector and on finding ways on how to cultivate and maintain resilience despite the drastic impact of the pandemic on the sector. Here again, I would like to congratulate the Museums Association of Namibia for moving forward to develop the first virtual museum of its kind in Namibia. It was obvious for UNESCO to support the Museums Association of Namibia to make this virtual museum a reality, as we believe it set a model in the sector. The Virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion will create a market for Namibian fashion. It will also create the opportunity to reveal the historical timeline for the diverse cultural influences on Namibia's fashion by showcasing both ancient traditional clothing and accessories and contemporary fashion. The website will provide a great opportunity to develop cultural interactions in the spirit of building bridges between generations and different communities. In conclusion, COVID-19 pandemic has not only accelerated our effort to explore technological innovation, but it has also influenced the way we think and view the future of museums in our communities. I would like to applaud the Museums Association of Namibia team that worked hard to make this virtual museum a success despite the impact of COVID-19. This is a clear demonstration of perseverance and resilience in challenging times. The Virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion demonstrates that museums are still performing their central educational function and are finding ways to remain accessible to both local and international visitors. I believe that as a window to the world, the virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion will also play a leading role in boosting the creative economy in Namibia. With this word, I would like to wish success and long life to the virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion. I thank you very much.
All protocols observed, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to having been granted this opportunity to say a few words as we launch the Virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion. Fashion always has been a fascination of life, and sometimes in some society is considered as an area of less importance. However, Friends, who has written about histories and conceptualization of fashion, defines fashion as a reflection of social, political, economic, and artistic forces of a given time. This definition does not only contextualizes fashion as a compass of forces that are encountered in the society, but it also highlights the relationship of fashion and change. This also highlights of how fashion, and the same with culture, is always changing. Changes in clothing are often brought on by outside forces, but we choose to respond to the forces as individuals or as a group. And this is how style, unique traditional clothing are created through times. Clothing in our society is always evolving, and with time it continues to do so. These changes sometimes are so fast or gradual, and sometimes we are not too fast to catch and document these changes. Documenting the changes in clothing can contribute to preservation of culture and a database of key interests to students, researchers, educators who can make use of such data. This remains, and it reminds me also of a time that I encountered in Ondelela cloth while visiting Finland in Helsinki. I visited a missionary museum, and I actually saw for the first time how Ondelela used to look like. And I actually could have this vivid memory of how Ondelela has actually transitioned through time from a beige cloth with thin stripes to a now contemporary Ondelela that is in shocking pink. And these visuals are very, very strong for us creators to remain relevant and also remain creative. At the same time, I was also encountered with the fact that as creatives in Africa, we are unable to access a lot of our cultural objects and items that are now being housed in different museums in Europe and the West. At the same time, this has actually started to change, especially in Namibia. Researchers have actually positioned that in 1995, Finland returned the sacred stones to Akwanyama Kingdom, and more cultural objects have since followed, and more discussions to return more items are ongoing, and more projects that are such as this are ongoing to resolve a situation to return these objects. So, I am also pleased to acknowledge that it is an honor to live in a time such as this, where we can have hard talks regarding our cultural objects and collectively seek a resolution. This exercise is quite radical and political at the same time. I know that as creatives, sometimes we want to shy away from the politics. We don't want to be involved in the politics. But fashion itself is quite political. The construction of aesthetics in our societies are socially constructed by those who are in power and influence. In the 17th century, it was the royals that had the power. And now, in the contemporary times, it's the influencers and the creators who are the key role players in changing fashion. The title of this project, Preservation of Endangered Cultural Heritage through Collaborative Conservation, Provenance Research, and Creative Knowledge, makes it possible for us to have an ongoing engagement to confront the past, but at the same time find healing. Historical collections from Namibia held at the Ethnologisches Museum in Berlin, Germany, and the Ethnographical collection at the National Museum of Namibia in Windhoek are now accessible through this website. These collections, which are now accessible, will serve as a database and research tool for students, researchers, and education. What is important to note at this stage is that this website is not simply a lens that gazes into the past, but it engages the present and then builds on into the future. There are features that show us how fashion designers such as Kim Matthews are using their culture as inspiration for creating Namibian fashion collections that are unique. In addition, other features also shows how Namibians are embracing and wearing their traditional clothing in the contemporary times. These features will allow us to change the narrative and shape our uniquely Namibian identity in fashion. Researchers are also encouraged to use this platform for publication and also to engage research. This platform has now come alive. We take a moment to acknowledge the work that went into making this possible for Namibians to embrace and engage. The partners, UNESCO, Gerda Henkel Foundation, Museums Association of Namibia, University of Namibia, National Museum of Namibia, Ethnographic museums, and then I would like to really take a moment to thank the Museum Association of Namibia, who have been involved in so many activities behind the scenes that have now made this website possible. And you can see a lot of the projects that the Museum Association of Namibia has involved themselves, including the stakeholders in the fashion industry, to make this data accessible to us. I don't want to leave out the technical team that worked tireless times. Alfred Muifi and the IT team behind this website, I take this moment to thank you with all my heart. I now encourage the public to engage the website, log in, subscribe to be informed about the latest news. Nimpandure Unene, thank you all.
Museums are bridges between people and cultures and promote participation and diversity. And the Museum of Namibian Fashion shares a similar perspective. Museum exhibitions often offers a complex understanding, and artifacts are the objects we make and use and then display in museums for a better understanding of our historical and cultural heritage. Artifacts are either cultural or historical interests that we collect from communities to help us understand the link between the past and the present. We collect artifacts because of the relevance and the significance they have on a particular exhibition and in museums. Also, we collect artifacts for preservation and conservation from climate and also from human beings as well. The Museum of Namibian Fashion is a work in progress, and over the past 2 years we managed to reach out to some communities to collect fashion attires. We collected from the Kunene region, in Opuo from the Ovahimba communities, and the Kamanyap from the Damara Nukwen communities. We further went to Omaheke region where we collected from the Ovaherero, Botswana, and San communities. However, we still want to collect more from all ethnic groups in Namibia. Due to the limited resources that we have at our disposal, in the current situation which we are facing, the COVID-19 pandemic, we are unable to go to communities to collect artifacts. Therefore, I humbly urge the public of all ethnic groups in Namibia to either donate or loan fashion attires to be displayed in the museum. Loan agreements will be provided depending on how long you want to loan out your items. Artifacts that we are looking at for the Museum of the Namibian Fashion could be anything from clothing, adornments, headdresses, shoes, and so forth. Fashion has no boundaries and anything unique would be appreciated. There are those wedding attires, suits, casual wears, traditional wear, worn before and after independence. Additionally, you could also provide us with photographs of different clothing, adornments, and headdresses, and share stories associated with your unique attires or guidelines on how to make a particular attire. Please do not hesitate to contact us should you wish to make a query, donation, or loan out your fashion attires to our museum. Lastly, this museum will be ours, and I urge the public again to buy into this project so that we can make it a success, and together we will flourish. I thank you.
The Museum of Namibian Fashion would like to thank all its stakeholders for the input that has gone into creating the first phase of the workshop. The second phase will focus on the development of the virtual shop and gaining more resources for the research hub. The next extension will focus in creating an online shop in the form of a virtual shop, which will focus on giving local designers an opportunity to sell their products internationally. We would also like to encourage individuals who are interested in being part of the development for the Museum of Namibian Fashion as stakeholders to kindly contact us at the Museums Association offices, or kindly contact the curator at po1@museums.com.na, so we may work together to make this museum a reality. I thank you.
English novelist E.M. Forster perhaps put it most eloquently when he said, "History develops, art stands still." And that is perhaps the hypothesis of the Museum of Namibian Fashion in virtual form, to develop a revered fashion hub of information, where the preservation of items from a particular time and era takes center stage to ensure they do not vanish in the future. With a fast-moving fashion industry, where clothes are often seasonal and the power that they have to speak to us easily forgotten, a fashion museum quickly becomes the missing ingredient in keeping fashion of yesteryears alive. During the global coronavirus pandemic, we are forced to do things differently and explore safer options that allow for the continued education and indeed interaction for and amongst creatives and role players in the fashion industry. It is for this reason that a virtual fashion museum in Namibia is important, perhaps now more than ever. The relationship between fashion and museum is one of mutual benefit. Fashion exhibitions can provide a valuable lens through which we can view ourselves and can help us to reflect on what we see while keeping our culture alive. The Fashion Museum will challenge us to reacquaint ourselves with the power of clothing in everyday life. It will remind us to appreciate the intrinsic detail in design and to delight in its power of expression, to value garments and afford them a long life to come, as we understand that they shape our imagination and our bodies. As a fashion enthusiast, and most certainly as the Fashion Council of Namibia, we feel strongly about advocating for the Museum of Namibian Fashion. The importance of preserving artifacts because their meaning and design can inspire Namibians, not only in the fashion industry but beyond, cannot be overstated. The Virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion will be a place that fashion students and enthusiasts, researchers, and tourists in almost all parts of the world can visit to get an outlook of the clothing and fashion trends of Namibia in a particular time frame. It will provide an opportunity for visitors to view historical items of clothing and accessories, as well as contemporary designs inspired by Namibia's rich history and cultural diversity. The website will also provide information on the clothes and fashion items that were used in ancient times, as well as portray the lifestyle of people in earlier times. It will be a one-stop with endless possibilities. Fashion lovers and enthusiasts will also play a crucial role of getting more involved by submitting items for possible display in the virtual museum. It is for this reason that the Fashion Council of Namibia is calling on its members and industry players to submit items or photographs that they think should be part of the collection of the Museum of Namibian Fashion. The aim is to curate the fashion museum into a hub that truly understands fashion and its impact. To close off, I again quote E.M. Forster, who also said, "Unless we remember, we cannot understand." And with that, I declare the Virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion officially open. Thank you.
Dear colleagues and friends, on behalf of the Ministry of Education, Art and Culture, I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to watch the official virtual launch of the Virtual Museum of Namibian Fashion. By now, the link to the Virtual Museum has been shared across all the social media platforms of the Museums Association of Namibia, and you have had the chance to visit the site. A lot of work has gone into the creating both Virtual Museum of Namibia Fashion and the Physical Museum of Namibia Fashion. I'd like to start by thanking all the different stakeholders who have already contributed to the creation of the initial display for the museum. I would like to thank the Gerda Henkel Foundation and UNESCO for financial support that has enabled the Virtual Museum of Namibia Fashion to be launched today. You have helped to transform our dream into a reality. I strongly believe that you will help to promote the Museum of Namibia Fashion across your networks, and encourage people to travel to our country as the skies fully open for business and leisure. The Museum of Namibian Fashion has an advisory committee, which has been led by Ms. Maria Carey, who lectures in textile and fashion basic, fashion studies and textile, then painted and printed in the Visual Performing Art Department of the University of Namibia, who is also an international acclaimed fashion designer in her own right. I would like to thank her and her team for guiding the development of the exhibition, and especially Ms. Cynthia Simi, who also dedicated much of her time and expertise to this project. The committee worked together to develop each of the themes in the museum, and they have helped tremendously to shape the displays. I should say that I believe that today is not the end of their work. In fact, it's just the beginning. Indeed, I would like to encourage people who are interested in supporting the museum to contact us and be part of helping to develop the museum further. I would also like to take this opportunity to give a special word of thanks to the colleagues at Museums Association of Namibia who worked tirelessly on the creation of displays and the development of museum. I've seen the huge amount of work that's done by the organization in developing museums across Namibia. I'm also aware that MAN only has 3 permanent staff members, and I know that they have worked incredibly hard to make this museum a reality and to help document Namibia's valuable intangible cultural heritage and material culture. I would like to give our heartfelt thanks to late colleague Dr. Jeremy Sylvester, who recently passed away. He tirelessly led this team to make this project and others like a success. This is one of the last projects that Sylvester worked on, and it speaks loudly to his dedication and passion for the industry. I would also like to thank the 3 colleague staff members at the Museum Association, namely Ms. Ndapeo Sadiaspara, Tuda Haitula, and Ms. Kavenu Alfred Mwifi, for continuing to spearhead this project. I would also like to thank my colleagues in the Ministry of Basic Education and Culture, who have been directly involved in working on the museum. I would highlight the work of the documentaries, Renji Matondange, Mr. Kaveno, as we call him, Chivora, and the conservator, Johanna Ishiko. Furthermore, I would like to thank the Fashion Council of Namibia for further continuing support, expertise, and dedication to seeing the Museum of Namibia Fashion become a reality. I would also like to thank all of us our fashion designers, and stakeholder who attended the stakeholder consultation workshop and continue to provide guidance for the team. However, I would like to take this opportunity, this moment, to once again echo the appeal of the Museum Association team for Namibians far and wide to reach out the Museum Association of Namibia to give their input, ideas and contribute to the museum while it's still in the development stage. I look forward to the opening of the physical museum in early 22. I would like to end by reminding all the residents of this beautiful land that this museum is ours. This is our museum. Let us use it. Let it make it matter to all of us. I thank you.
You are a beauty. Pero re la ya ruki. Mano bena dino. Dino re anu re ya di. Otira kabura mona. Otira kabura konima. Watanda bubatanda iho. Watanda bubatanda iho. Buba nyoko. Buba nyoko. Ka. Yungura kavianda. Mavidi kwata. Watanda puwatanda kapumu. Oripura beda komainu. Oripura beda komainu. Watanda pubatanda iho. Watanda pubatanda iho. Buba nyoko. Hey, buba nyoko. Watanda pubatanda iho. Watanda pubatanda iho.